Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel. This is Business Connections Live with Steve Hyland.
Hello and welcome to Business Connections Live, the program for entrepreneurs, SMEs and business owners. Now on today's show we're going to be discussing why business relationships should be personal and not a process. Some interesting lessons to learn here on today's program, and we've got a real expert in the studio, TV presenter and all-round good guy as well. Joining me in the studio is Alistair Greener. He's a communications speaker and consultant. Alistair, lovely to have you on the program today.
Thank you.
This is an interesting topic. I think a lot of people get this wrong. We don't know how to communicate properly, and I think a lot of us do feel that it is a process and that we don't make things personal. We see this on LinkedIn all the time. So where do we start with this? And probably first of all, who are you?
I'm, as you mentioned, I run a company called Present Yourself, which is a training company, and we help people with presentational skills, media skills, things like that. But I also deliver keynotes about personalising the personalisation process, because I find, and we all do, we're all customers of someone, and we all feel that sort of slightly irritating feeling of being processed. Actually, do you really care about me as a client? You know, and what I would like to do is to help people put that personal relationship back, rather than it becoming this process, rather than it being a box ticking exercise.
Are we talking about here the have a nice day, hope you're feeling great today, where you kind of get these artificial compliments being paid to you?
There's an element of that, and yes, I would always say chuck away the script, and a lot of it comes in what I would call management that isn't empowering their employees. So by recruiting the right people in the first place, you get the right people who you then can empower, who can deliver that genuine customer service. And what tends to happen is that we'll, as management, and I had a team of over 100 staff when I was working on cruise ships many years ago, and you sometimes think, you know what, if I just get everyone to follow this set of rules, life will be much easier. But I want to ban the word generic. I don't want people to be doing a generic process. Let's actually just talk to each other. Let's actually have a relationship. And in this world of AI and chatbots and things like that, isn't it great that we actually get to talk to people and we actually have a relationship with people? And actually, from a business point of view, it just makes good sense.
Do you think technology, though, is removing that? You mentioned AI there. We were talking about AI and automation in the office a couple of weeks ago on the programme. And it just seems that we're bringing up a generation now who are more in tune with using iPads and smartphones and things like that. Is this going to become increasingly more difficult?
Well, actually, I see it as being almost more positive, because it's now easier to stand out from the crowd because you're not employing all of the text messages, the WhatsApp and so on. And I'm not saying for one moment stop doing that, but if you want to make a relationship a little bit more personal, a business relationship where your customer, your client is going to become a brand advocate for you, then it's actually going to be easier to stand out from the crowd because you're doing something that's different from other people.
When you go into your clients, what's the thing that you find yourself saying the most often? Is there a common mistake? Is there a central piece of learning that we could take away if we watched no more of the programme? We go, do you know what? That's cracked it for me.
I once heard a great phrase from somebody who I interviewed, and he said, you know, the trouble with today, we go straight into our sales mode and we start creating solutions for problems that don't exist. And it really comes down to listening skills. Are we actually listening to what our customers and our clients actually want? Because we've got our product, we've got what we offer, off you go. And actually, well, let's listen to what the client wants. And when I do my presentational training courses, the first thing I'll do is in the pre-call, before we do anything else, is me listening to them. Well, what is it? What do you want out of this? You know, I love this whole thing of the phrase people use, it's bespoke. It's just for you. You know, are you fed up with that phrase? We put the customer in the centre of everything we do. Well, that's a pretty big claim to make. And so often people are absolutely failing. And the best thing is, I love it when the entrepreneurs go back and they become the secret worker. or the secret client, that whole sort of secret shopper thing, and they see something that they would never ever see if they didn't do that. And that's really valuable.
So it's fundamentally then, the thing that you're talking about is the fact that we don't listen enough. Is that where we're getting it wrong? It's not about the talking, it's not about the presenting, it's all about the listening, and we just don't do enough of it.
A huge amount of it is absolutely that, yes. But I think also it's then when the communication does come through, how are you communicating? Are you communicating in a way that your client wants you to communicate? And we've seen lots of studies about mirroring methods of communication. You get an email back from them, you see the style they do, great, well, let's email back to them in that same way, so that that's clearly a way that they like. And making a bit of a connection with people, listening to what they're saying, but then delivering not just what you've said you're going to deliver, but I have a bit of a motto, which is, you'll remember Madness, the band, one step beyond. And if you imagine you're going down a highway and it says going the extra mile, or the quick exit that says that'll do, it's making sure that we are over-delivering and underselling what we do. And I appreciate corporations find that difficult.
Well, a lot of corporations tend to give lip service to all of this, don't they? I mean, there was one very large energy organisation, and theirs was wearing the customer's shoes. And if you can find their slippers, have a go at them as well. But I mean, a little bit of craziness there, because it in reality it never happened. And and going the extra mile is another one.
Yeah,
it's meaningless. It's meaningless babble, isn't it?
It is, unless you actually.
So how do you? Well, what I was going to say, how do you turn it around to make it meaningful phrases?
You'll certainly soon find out when you get client feedback. When you get the feedback from your client that says, I wasn't expecting that. Oh, that was a nice touch. All those little things. And by the way, these aren't massive things. Those little things, when you get that feedback, that's when you know you're doing the right thing. So my motto is, look at what you're delivering, and make sure that whatever you're delivering, you've got a few things in your back pocket that you know will make that little bit of a difference to them. Because you often will have a sales force who are very keen to get the deal, and then whoever's delivering the product or delivering the service is left, how the heck do I measure up to what we've set ourselves up for, walking in those customers' shoes? Yeah, but I can't. I've only been given 15 minutes for the appointment. How on earth can I do that? So you do need a management who are strong enough to coordinate both elements of your offering, so that you are able to do extra, do something that the customers aren't expecting. Simple things like saying thank you for your business. I actually had, this was fantastic, somebody I order off regularly, and these are nutritional products. I got a freebie at Christmas saying, thank you very much for being a great customer, here you go. She thought, wow, that's nice. One of my favourite stories I love telling is, I went into a restaurant with some friends of mine in Kew. It was an Anthony Royal Thompson restaurant. I don't mind giving him a plug, because this was amazing. We walked in, my friends had only been there a couple of times, and as we walked in, the maitre d' came to them and said, Mr. and Mrs. Wing, how lovely to see you again. Would you like the same table you had last time?
So just those little differences.
Absolutely. And you know the amazing thing about that story is,
it's being conscious about your customers.
I'm still telling that story over and over again. I have no idea what we ate. I couldn't even describe the interior of the restaurant. But one thing I do know is how he made us feel on that day. We all know the Maya Angelou quote. And I've been telling that story now for 12 years. And wouldn't we all love our customers to be talking about us in that same way, that we did something?
How do we extrapolate that? I know you're saying to turn a process into something that's personal, but how do you extrapolate that? Because in many respects, what we're trying to do is we're trying to turn this personal experience into a process that we can repeat on an ongoing basis. So we're a bit chicken and egg, aren't we, to a certain extent?
And that's a really fair point.
So how do you do that within a training course, or when you're teaching people, or when you're explaining this to people? Because what you want to do is, they do need a process. We follow processes, and we can measure processes. So they could take your advice at the moment, and without a process there, you can't measure it.
No.
So how do you get around that?
I have a 5-step program to it.
Excellent, that's what we like to hear.
We like 5 steps.
Yes.
First step is making it about them, making sure we are listening to what they say. Matt Bird, who does a fantastic job as the relationology expert, says that if you talk about yourself, you're an egotist. If you talk about other people, you're a gossip. If you actually put the client first, if you listen to them, that's building a good relationship. Listening to your customers. I have a simple, I don't have big computers and technology to have a customer relationship management system. I just use my phone and write notes. Oh, Steve Hyland, he lives, I won't say where, but all that sort of stuff. A little bit of information.
Lives in a shack, a mud hut, just outside of London.
So I make those notes about people so you can then have that conversation when you next speak to them.
Of course, that's what CRMs will give you, though.
Yes,
isn't it, as well?
they will, but the point I'm making is you don't have to spend fortunes in doing something like that. Before you pick up the phone, before you make that connection, just have a little look back. Take that second.
Do you consciously do that?
Yes. I try to. Now, what I should say is this is all something to aim for. I would love to say that I'm brilliant at all of this. I've got better since I've been talking more about it because I'm more aware. Yeah. And I think a lot of it is about becoming more aware about what you're doing. So the first one, make it about them. Secondly, is to make sure that, and this is something that people often forget, is about going the extra mile, making sure that we are delivering what we say we deliver, but more. But then the third one is what I call the head 'em off at the pass. You might remember a great film, Blazing Saddles, where they basically took the mickey out of the spaghetti westerns. We'll head 'em off the pass, boss. I hate that cliche, But what it says is, make sure that you're ahead of the game with your customers. When you say you're going to communicate with them then, and if not beforehand. I always feel if a customer's ever or client has to come to me and say, oh, by the way, that thing you were going to send, or you knew that you were going to do, could you do that for me? That to me is a massive failure because I've now created more work for them.
So this has been proactive as opposed to reactive?
Completely. So making sure that all of our communication is ahead of the game. We're thinking about what the client might be thinking at this point. For example, having an appointment with someone and it's 3 weeks away, well, how about the Friday before when they're thinking, I wonder if he's going to turn up to that point, send a quick email. Yeah, looking forward to seeing you on Monday, Steve. See you then. Little things, and this is the whole point. These are all little things that make a massive difference. The next one is getting personal. If you're interacting on social media, interacting LinkedIn, make a proper connection. Don't do the generic responses and all those kind of things. It means nothing. And actually, if someone does it to me, I feel a little bit, you just push that button. Actually, now I'm thinking more negatively towards you because actually I'd rather you did nothing than actually make me think I was just one of the people you clicked on that day. Spelling people's names right, getting their titles right, their companies right, understanding exactly who it is. If you're using a standard letter, try and put something personal in there. I appreciate, as you said before, there's always going to be an element of a process, but try and personalize that process as much as possible. Really interesting, Warren Buffett said once that price is what you pay, value is what you get. So let's make sure that our customers are getting real value and above and beyond. And the last one really is the simplest one of all, just saying thank you.
Listen, more from Alistair Greener in just a few moments' time. We're talking about, he's a communications speaker and consultant. We're talking about discussing why business relationships should be personal and not a process. And we talk about this a lot, in fact, on the programme, don't we? Particularly when it comes to using social media. Are you, as Alistair just said, are you a button pusher or do you do personalised letters? And how often has somebody, should we say on LinkedIn, linked in with you? And even LinkedIn as a platform says, start a conversation. However, there are some really differing views on this. Some people like Angus Grady, who we've had on the programme before, he said, so do we really need to do the dance? Do we really need to have a relationship with the person at the other end? If they're interested in a product or a brand or whatever you are selling, do we really need to then do that dance to be, liked, known and whatever, and trusted? Anyway, more from Alistair in just a few moments' time here on this edition of Business Connections Live. Let's go back a week now, shall we? Last week we talked to Ian Dixon about the Big 100 Business Tips. He runs an event each and every year. Last year he ran it, 100 business tips for 100 people for £100. It was a big success. This year he's doubling it up. 200 people are going to be joining him this time for 100 business tips for £100. He's looking forward to running that. It's a sellout each and every year. We tried to do as many of the business tips as we possibly could. We got nowhere near 100. In fact, I think we only got maybe into the 20s, but an interesting concept as well. So 100 business tips, and they range from everything from social media all the way through to sales, and also the big questions too, conceptually about your particular business. Good show last week. If you want to watch the entire program, you go to our website at businessconnectionslive.com. But to give you a bit of a taster, here's the highlights from last week's edition of Business Connections Live. Now, today's show, we're going to be discussing the big 100 business tips. The big 100 business tips. This is going to be a cracking show. I don't actually think we're going to get through 100 big business tips, but we will get through as many as we possibly can today. Joining me in the studio is an old friend to the show. I use the term old loosely. Ian Dixon, international business speaker.
I say it flippantly, but I kind of make stuff up and try and do something disruptive. We were talking about it earlier, trying to Ianize things, just to give it a fresh coat of paint so that people will embrace something that maybe has already been. So now that we are predominantly, for the first time actually, that stats have come out in the last 3 months that we spend more money on our online marketing than our offline marketing now. So, and we vastly underestimate how much is required from a quantity perspective to get people to know us, like us and trust us enough to want to start. So you must always demonstrate how quickly, in stock, available, stock levels, anything that demonstrates how quickly you'll deliver your product or service. Money loves greed. All right? Money loves greed. As human beings, we want the shortcut. And so all of these shows that I go to and all this stuff we were talking about with these selling the promise is that we get caught up by buying things because we think it's going to give us a shortcut to what we want. So let's do the USP is dead.
The what?
The USP is dead.
Is it?
Yeah, finished. What makes you remarkable? What makes your business remarkable? And as a mindset shift, to go away and think about that as a concept rather than what am I doing that makes us different. People ask me how much networking is enough. So, and networking in 15 years still sits in the top 3 to 5 things that you should be doing to get yourself. If I said to you, let's go and do some boot camps or get down the gym, it's just a boring. I couldn't think of anything less likely to want to do. But if I said to you, do you fancy a game of tennis? And every Saturday we went and played tennis. Love it. So, and then the outcome of, or go for a swim. We talked earlier about going for a swim. The outcome of the process is that you've got yourself fit. So process, not outcome. Forget about the outcome. Find something that makes the process enjoyable. So Tinder is obviously a dating website for those that don't know, but it is probably a shorter route to market. They're not interested in dinner and a drink. They just want to find somebody to go to the hotel room with. And business connections isn't Tinder. So when people connect with me on LinkedIn and then send me a message in my inbox saying, by the way, do you want to buy my stuff? I send them a note back saying this isn't Tinder. So the 3:30 rule. So you get 3 seconds to earn the right for the next 30 seconds. This show is a really good example. Anything that is outward facing, you've got 3 seconds to earn the right for 30 seconds. You've got 30 seconds to get 3 minutes of their time. 3 minutes will give you 30 minutes. If you can get 30 minutes, you're in. Facebook groups are your new data lists. So I was on a sunbed in Mexico in December, just gone, the name dropping, but I'd pressed the go live button before we came home on My Business Academy, which is my Facebook group. And we had 250 people in there before I got back. In 7 days we had 250 people in there. We're just shy of 600 people. It's all open. I do videos every week. I give PDFs away. We've got books. We've got experts but it's my community, and these are all people. I've never invited a soul. My name is Ian Dixon. I'm an international business speaker and business performance coach, and you've joined me today on Business Connections Live. We've been sharing business tips literally one after another, and I'm going to reel off some now and see if we can get some done in 60 seconds. So here we go. This isn't Tinder. This isn't Tinder. Your website is never finished. Hybrid networking is a thing. Video killed the blogging star. Facebook groups is your new data list. Walls are walls. Messages is my inbox. The USP is dead. Width and depth funnels. Dicky bow tie funnels. Sex symbols for business is greater than. Put your business in airplane mode. Oh my God, have we done enough?
No.
So 7, 10, 5, 7 hours, 10 times, 5 different ways. The 3:30 rule. Play home and away with your networking.
Give us 3 more.
It's never meant to be easy. What else have I got? I think I've done everything that I had on my initial list here. Yeah. So long and short, and slow and long. So online is quick, offline is slow.
Fantastic program on last week's edition of Business Connections Live. And if you're thinking to yourself, boy, I need to go along to that event to get those big 100 tips, if you go along to Business Connections Live to the website and go to Ian's page, program page, all the contact details and booking information is there as well. And if you're thinking to yourself too, I'd like a program just like this one for my organization, perhaps maybe for my business. If you're sending out a newsletter on a weekly basis, why don't you turn your readers into viewers? What about that for an idea? Engage your audience. It's one of the biggest problems I think that organizations have, both with customers and employees alike, is the way that they engage them. In fact, this is to a certain extent what Alistair is talking about today, how we treat our audience. So if you feel that maybe something like this program brought to you in a beautifully customized set with your name all over it, beautifully branded was the word I was looking for, then why don't you get in touch with us here? It's that easy to do that. We'll give you some advice on what you need to do. Just drop us an email to studio at businessconnectionslive.com. Better still, pick the phone up, give us a call. That's the best thing in the whole world to do on 01784 256 777. That's our telephone number. Don't forget, you can follow our stream of consciousness as well on Twitter at BCL Business TV. You can also watch the program each and every week, leaving your comments not only on YouTube but also on our Facebook page as well. But with over 260 odd programs, around about 350 hours of great business advice, why don't you go to our website, see what we can do for you? There's the website right now. Get in touch with us, and who knows, it could be you that's on our program next week here on Business Connections Live. You're watching Business Connections Live. Great to have your company with us as always. My guest on today's show is Alistair Greener. He's a communications speaker and consultant. And today we're discussing relationships. Relationships within business should be personal and not a process. If you feel you've got a process within your organization, if you feel you take your customers through that process, perhaps you even may treat your staff in a kind of a process-driven way, why not make it personal? Because people like that attention. Alistair's already said the simpler things, just like saying thank you to your customer and respond. I love this one, responding, being proactive and not reactive. So let's look at the key things then. How to make your interactions new and exciting to new and existing customers more personal. How do you make your interactions like that? What are the 5 key things, 3 key things, 2 key things you need to do?
Number 1, be different. Don't do what everybody else does. It's like sending out the corporate Christmas card. Fine, but how much value are you getting out of it? How about a personalised New Year's card? Something that's a little bit different. Things like that makes you stand out. A friend of mine, and I now do this, he sends out to, when he's done a training with a client, he will send them a tray of cupcakes a week later saying, great to meet you all, fantastic job. Wonderful. He's now memorable. It's doing the little things that make you more memorable and actually puts a human face on it. It's somebody has thought about that. And big one for me is handwritten notes. When you say thank you, send a handwritten note saying thank you. You know, my partner works for a pharmaceutical company and she gets all the notes and things, and people try and send information to her all the time. And she said, if I get a handwritten envelope, it'll probably be put on my desk because my assistant will probably think that's personal. What a great way to get yourself in front of somebody. How easy. I mean, I've got terrible handwriting, but it's amazing how many people interact far more when they realise that my interaction with them has been personal. We talked about LinkedIn earlier on.
Well, I was going to say, the dance sometimes starts on social media. What do you do there?
Number one, get their name right, spell it right, and make sure that it's a proper chat. It's a proper conversation, and you're not using any of the stock questions or stock comments. And the first thing I do is make sure, what some people do is they make it personal, but put it at the end of the stock phrase. Unfortunately, anybody reading that will see the stock phrase at the beginning and will probably switch off mentally. Put your first comment, hi Steve, great to see you at Business Connections Live last week. Something that immediately says to you, this is actually an interaction. This isn't just someone trotting off the same old stuff. And then try and pick up something that you had in that conversation that was different, that actually did show that you were listening to what I was saying. So you make it in that way a little bit more personal. Great to hear about your holiday in Malta. Hope you had a great time. Something silly like that just makes it different and more memorable to everybody else.
You let the secret out of the bag now, the holiday in Malta. I don't know what the wife's going to say when she finds out about that. Okay, then what about the quality of the communications? Because I think that's a skill that we are actually losing. I think we're losing social skills on a one-to-one basis. You see this at networking events when you go there. People don't know how to communicate with people. The written word, we're talking about that. A lot of people perhaps maybe... Your writing may be bad. My spelling is dreadful, actually, because I'm dyslexic, so that's an issue that some people will have. There are issues that people will feel and they will hide behind perhaps technology. So what's your advice to get around that?
And it's a really interesting thing, and I completely understand it, because one of the things we're reluctant to do when we're in professional mode is to show any form of vulnerability. But we all know that vulnerability is actually what attracts one individual to another, even on a business level. So a handwritten note, even if it is misspelt, I couldn't care less that much. But the fact that someone I've had handwritten notes where people spelt my name wrong, but actually how much better
Well, you've got a funny spelling of Alistair, haven't
yes,
you?
and maybe that makes me more conscious than other people because it's spelt differently. But little things, it's that whole thing, you know, it's like when you've got kids and they make something for you. How much nicer is it than actually they've spent something on their pocket money quickly and gone out and bought something? The fact they've spent time and they've clearly made an effort. And I think this is really what it's all about, is showing that you've made some form of effort to communicate in a way that shows that you care about the relationship and you're not just one of 100. When I used to work on cruise ships, our job, you imagine every week in, week out, people were coming on board for their holiday. We had to make sure that it was their holiday, their week. They weren't just week 46. It was, what are we going to do this week? And references we would do. You know what's great about you guys this week? You do such and such. And we loved it when Millie did such this and something like that. Those things that help connect you because they realise you get us this week. We are different. We all love to be treated a little bit differently. So make sure that we recognise that. And that's why it's the quality of the communication. I have no problem with newsletters that go out. That's fine. It's a great way to communicate. But don't think you're getting personal just because you send out a newsletter and you put the algorithm in so it's got my name there. Follow it up with, oh, hi, Steve. I don't know if you saw the newsletter, but I did put that section in there for you because I know that was particularly interesting for you from our last conversation we had. Spending that time, I think, is incredibly well spent.
What do you do when it comes to collating the information, when it comes to receiving it? There's a lot of output going on. Let's talk a little bit about the input. What are you doing? What are your techniques? What tools do you use to collate the information that you're collecting?
when it comes down to individuals, it's literally just simply on the notes on my contacts on my phone. I'll just have lots and lots of information there about them, dated, when we had conversations and what happened. So, if you like, a very simple CRM system. The filing I have with emails, again, before I make the phone call, I will make sure that in the Steve Highland folder, I've got a trace of the conversations we've had. So I'm not asking the same question again. I'm not repeating myself. All the things that winds us up, where you think, actually, they're not listening to me. I've explained that. I've done all of that. So it's been highly organised.
By doing all of this then, what do you think the upsell is? For instance, if you looked at the world of direct response TV, they feel that if you have a pre-recorded show, you're going to get one figure. If you do a live show, there's a 70% uplift. So you see an increase. If we're looking at the techniques that you're talking about, what kind of increase could a business see potentially in their turnover? Because that's why we're doing all of this.
Absolutely. And it's about engagement. It's engaging at the right time at the right place, and engagement that, again, is on a personal level.
Are there figures to show an uplift when we do this?
There is. There's a particular, for some research that was done in America, that if you spend just 5% on engaging with your customers, looking after, nurturing those relationships, you can get anything between a 25 and 95% uplift. Now, you compare that with the cost of going out getting new customers. And this is the thing that frustrates me so much. People are so busy getting new customers. They're going to networking events. They're doing all these. And actually, maybe not go to one networking event a month and spend that month engaging with the customers that you already have, making sure you are looking after them, making sure that you are doing those things. Because there's no question, that research has shown there's a tremendous benefit. And then there's an invisible benefit. The point that you become recommended, you're the go-to person. We will only recommend a plumber when we feel absolutely comfortable. We're trusting them. We know they'll do this. We'll know they'll do the things we want them to do. Well, it's the same in every other kind of business as well. We want to be advocates and brand advocates of each other, but we'll only do that when we trust them, when we feel we've been looked after, when we feel we've been given that extra value. But what an amazing thing.
Does it work better, do you think, you were talking there about plumbers, the recommendation of tradesmen, things like that. Does it work better in that particular market, or do you think this works across the corporate market as well? Do you think it matters? So you're dealing with a large corporate, you're dealing with buyers, you're dealing with accounts teams, you're dealing with management teams. There's a lot of people that you're dealing with, and you've got to then maintain this spread. This relationship has got to be built across all of them. Is it as effective there as it would be on a smaller business?
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, we all know the salesman's adage, people buy people. Relationships are built on people, not process. And therefore, actually, you become the trusted person. You become the person that they want to do business with. We all know the trouble it is sometimes to get onto the preferred supplier list. Mm-hmm. But we also know how actually you've got to mess up pretty big time, or you've got to really take your customer for... just taking them for granted to quite a high level to lose that moment. And you only realise it when you've lost them. But actually becoming that preferred person and staying there, and then they recommend you. Because people are fundamentally, you know what, it's great. We know Steve, he's reliable, he's this, he's that, all the positive things. Great, we'll go to him again. And by the way, when somebody comes to us and asks for somebody, we will use him. And that, by the way, works, I think, at any level. Even the highest contract. If you're negotiating a contract for £2 million, and you've got someone you know that you can trust, you've got someone you've got a bit of a relationship with, somebody you've seen the whites of their eyes. I personally am not particularly keen on online training. A lot of people I know in the industry do it. I just like to be with people. I like to have that engagement with people, because I know then I can make an impact, far more impact than I can just, on the internet, where I'm doing another training session in 5 minutes. Yes, it might be cheaper, it might be a quick turnaround, but actually we talked about the quality beforehand. And I think the quality of that relationship can make the world of difference. I mean, let's be honest, look at the golf course. The golf course, some people think, is invented for relationships, because as you're walking around and you're having those conversations, you don't have to join a golf club to be able to be much better at it.
More from Alistair Greener in just a few moments' time. He's a communications speaker and consultant. We're talking about why business relationships should be personal and not a process. And once again, if you are in that circumstance at the moment, or that situation where, in fact, your relationships with your people are very black and white, they're not shades of grey, perhaps. Maybe you're not on first name terms. Maybe you don't know the people that you are communicating. You don't really know who your customer is. It's interesting when you do deal with large corporates, because a lot of the time you are dealing with procurement, and once you've dealt with procurement, and then once you're onto the recommended list of suppliers, you never talk to procurement again, and then it's down to the individuals. It's a tricky place to be, I think, but I do agree with Alistair. It is very much a case of what you've got to do is you've got to be very aware of what your customer wants. I love the idea about being proactive. There is nothing worse than waiting and them phoning you up and saying, where's the thing you promised me? Should be in there first, and if it's going to be late, get in there early, and tell them your story first before they phone up chasing you. What we're talking about, customer experience, we thought we'd actually give you just some advice from Jerry Brown. He's been on the program a number of times. He's the customer lifeguard, and he's was on the program talking about his winning formula for building lasting and profitable customer experiences and relationships. He says that companies are beginning to realise those customer interactions can't be a zero-sum game. They need to be a truly memorable, positive customer experience, which is exactly what Alistair is saying. That has a winning proposition for both the customer and the company. Great show from Jerry. If you get a chance, check both of them out, both his programs. This one is Business Connections Live 216, went out in February 2018. A great program, and with the key takeaways, here's Jerry Brown.
So I'm Jerry Brown, the customer lifeguard. I am on a mission to save the world from bad customer service, and I'm trying to do it one customer at a time. But I think the point I would like to leave you with is really just to say what I just said to Steve. As an organization, as a company of any size, you do control your own destiny. You do control the ability to deliver a great customer experience. And you will probably find that if you bring this to your employees, they will absolutely engage with you. We've heard about employee experience, how important it is. If you make the point to them that this is great for everybody, that this is something that they can participate in, they're not being told they must do this, they must do that. They play an active part. It will make a huge difference, because as we said off the top, when a customer wins, nobody loses.
When the customer wins, nobody loses. Jerry Brown there on Business Connections Live, a really great program. I think on that particular program as well, we look at United Brake Guitars. Have you seen that?
I have, and it's, you know what, that is a perfect example, isn't it?
But they just don't seem to learn from that.
Yes.
And it is interesting, because that kind of leads us on to, by the way, Alistair Greener, my guest on today's program, that does lead us on that if you look at the likes, shall we say, of Ryanair, they're rude to their customers, they make it difficult for their customers, they don't treat the customers as they should be, but yet the seats will be filled.
And of course, if you have a race to the bottom, they will be, because people are obviously very price sensitive, and that will always apply. I don't know about you, I don't want to be the person who is the cheapest at what I do, and therefore that's why I get custom, and my margins are really low, and it's not something I would want to do. I would want people to look at me thinking, I'm getting more than value for money. I want people to be shouting about me from the rooftops. I once interviewed a guy called Anthony Gaskill, who is from a company called Reputation.com. And what they do is they absolutely will check out your reputation. What are people saying about you online? What are people saying about you, in the media and everywhere else? And what they will do is help you manage your reputation. Well, the things I'm talking about is a great way to manage your reputation, especially if you're a smaller business. It's much, much easier because you're in control of what messaging is going out about you. Is that messaging all about reliable? As a TV presenter, the industry's fickle. People can easily get other people. But if they know that you're easy to work with, that you'll turn up on time, you won't mess them around, you'll communicate, you'll do everything that a professional would do, you're going to get rehired. And they'll call you up first because actually, you know what, we can call Steve because we know he's the right man. And having that reputation in an industry is massive. We're talking about GDPR. GDPR has already been said that GDPR is more about your reputation than it is about the fines that are going to come. You know, you have to look at Cambridge Analytica and look at the consequences of getting something massively wrong. So guarding your reputation is a massively important part of making sure you build good relationships.
What we're talking about here, though, is trust, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I mean, GDPR is all about the trust, what I'm going to do with your data, how I'm going to use it, and then what I'm going to do with it afterwards. I mean, that's GDPR. And they got caught out because they weren't trusted, and the trust was damaged. And I think we see that with public figures, and we see that with organisations. It's when trust disappears. Let's talk about advocacy then. How do we make people a brand advocate, part of the tribe? Someone who's going to shout and dance and sing our praises. Is there a way that we can encourage them to do that? Or is it once again slightly passive in as much as that we hope they'll do it because of the way we've treated them?
I think you need to ask without question. It's a little bit like when somebody is really pleased with the training they've had from me. I'll say, thank you so much, I really appreciate it. Would you mind giving me a recommendation on LinkedIn? Would you mind giving me a quote that I can use? Or if it's there and then and the video camera's still running, would you mind giving me a video testimonial? You know, talk to other people, but you have to build that relationship first. You have to get to that point where you can ask. There's nothing worse than asking and there's stone silence because you don't have a good enough relationship. So yes, you've got to get that relationship to a point that you know that they will become brand advocate for you.
In that case, then, how I mean, we've talked about going out of the way. We make certain that we contact them. We're proactive as opposed to reactive. At what point can you identify that that the relationship is right to make them part of your tribe, to make them an advocate for your business? Because there is going to be a moment in any relationship where people don't know each other. And from that point on, that's when the relationship is growing and learning, isn't it?
It's what you were calling before. It's developing that trust. You know, you don't get instant trust. You know, in love, you might have love at first sight, but very rarely do you get trust at first sight. That has to be earned. So absolutely, you can't get someone to be a brand advocate for you if you've done nothing for them. If they've not experienced the service that you're giving them as a client, then no, don't think I would ever ask someone to be a brand advocate for me unless I've got something that I can lean back on that I know full well they've had a great experience with me and they've been surprised by something that I've done for them that they weren't expecting. That's had to be really memorable.
When you explain this to businesses, do you often get the response, well, we're doing that already, and they don't realise how little or how much they're doing?
I think every business aims for it. No one's out there to annoy their customers or to get it wrong. But I think they're paying lip service to communication. They're not actually doing it. And I love it when you go secret shopping and all those kind of things, which I know has negative connotations of spying on the organisation or whatever. But actually, especially for a manager who's quite high up, who maybe isn't having the same customer interface that his customers are having, just to get that feeling of, well, what's it like to be a customer of my organisation? How does it feel like? How am I being looked after? Is it very transactional, or is there something else there? Is this a company who's in it for the long term with me? Is this a company that wants to have a relationship and work with me in the future? Because actually, for all of us, it's so much easier, isn't it, to go back to the same people every time. So it's our business to lose if we don't look after them. And just a little reminder periodically. I remember once there's a book called by John Rulin called Giftology, and he talks about giving gifts. Absolutely give out the branded mug and things. That's fine, that's nice. But he said the trouble is branded mugs, that's advertising. You know, there's a bit of a transaction going on here. I'm giving you that because I want you to have it on your mug rack or somewhere in the staff kitchen so people see it. But giving something that isn't branded, all of a sudden people think, wow, they just did that because they wanted to do that for me. Now that's gifting. That's when you're actually developing a far stronger relationship because you're doing it for the relationship. You're not doing it because there could be a further transaction down the road.
Do you think the managing directors, the CEOs, the senior management team, do you think they care?
They should care.
I know they should, but I'm just wondering, do you think they do?
I think they care when they see the numbers aren't coming in. They care when they get a barrage of complaints. They care when they are at the golf club and somebody says something to them. I think then they care. And where I think what you're alluding to, which is absolutely accurate, when it's small, when it's just noise in the background of dissatisfaction, that's when it can be very easily ignored.
This is like any review, isn't it? You go online, you look at TripAdvisor or any of the other review sites, you'll get either bad reviews or great reviews. But the vast majority of the audience in the middle, who it's okay, will never ever write that down unless it's bad or it's really good. Mm-hmm. And so, all that noise is going on. Nobody ever hears that noise. So I'm just wondering, because it's such a small percentage of the reaction that they get, does it bother them?
And they will be making that financial decision in their minds. I think actually it probably bothers them more than anything else, because I think ultimately managers would like to feel they're leading a great organisation. They'd like to feel a pride in their organisation of what they're doing. And if they understand the sums of what difference it can make, of course, we can't all react to one negative review. I'm a big fan of TripAdvisor. I leave stuff all the time, and I always do a compliment sandwich deliberately, because I know that then my review will actually be acted on, or certainly other people will look at it and pay attention to it. And actually, anybody who's the owner of the premises that I've just reviewed will probably take note, because they realise that everybody else will as well. And I tend to get more interaction because they realise it's not just someone having a rant because of my pasty was a little bit cold or it took me ages to get it or something. But coming back to your question about whether they care, businessmen absolutely will care about the bottom line. They will care of the effect that it has on that. But actually, if they understand the power of looking after our customers, if they understand how much more they can get from a small investment, and it's about empowering their teams to be able to deliver it as well. And yes, there's an element of the managers really have to lead from the top, and the way they engage with their teams has to reflect the ethos that we're trying to talk about. And sometimes you have to sneak that in a little bit because they don't get it.
I'm just kind of wondering, is this a bigger topic then? Is this about employee engagement, engaging them the way you would, treating them the way you would want to be treated yourself? And by treating them that way, they will engage better with the customers. So therefore, everybody it's a kind of a win-win situation. But it does seem that a lot of corporate clients, a lot of corporate organizations don't identify that. And it is an issue. They stop talking to their employees. And if they're not talking to their employees, the chances are they're not really talking to their customers.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. When I was working on cruise ships, we used to have what we called the internal customer. So in other words, everybody within the organisation is a customer. They're either an external customer or an internal customer. And as an internal customer, that's incredibly valuable, because for you to know whether or not your team are doing what you are hoping that they're doing, that's where it becomes clear when you have that open communication with your teams. So it is really, really essential that you do have that communication. And of course, there's a point in time people say, oh, it's the middle management or it's a different stage of the management. Of course, we all know, I'm not a management guru, but we all know it comes from the top. I worked in education for a while, and it was amazing the effect that the head of a school or a college made on the whole atmosphere of that particular school or college, and it all went back up to the top. So absolutely, there are big, big lessons to be learned from the top, and I do hope that they get it. And sometimes when they see the figures and they see what a difference it can make, either to the benefit or to the detriment of their business, that's when they sit up and take note.
Well, I'm going to ask you to do in a moment, I'm going to ask you to do a kind of an MOT check. I mean, we've got our key takeaways at the end of the programme, but a kind of a process, if you can take us through a process where, first of all, where we identify if we've got a problem or not, that would be very handy to do. Then maybe a couple of the key things that you would do to improve that problem, and just to remind us as well of what the outcome will be. Of course, you're going to do it twice because we ask you for the key takeaways at the end of the programme. Anyway, more from Alistair Greener in just a moment, our communications speaker and consultant. We're talking about why your business relationship should be personal and not a process. And if you do have a process where you're looking after your customers and you feel perhaps, maybe it's that uncomfortable feeling, maybe when you're at home, you're watching the TV, you think about the process that your employees are actually using when it comes to talking to customers, and it brings you out in that cold sweat. You know the one I'm talking about, where you feel slightly uncomfortable in the clothes you're wearing. You know the kind of thing I mean. Well, then maybe today's program is going to be a bit of a help for you on this edition of Business Connections Live. You're watching Business Connections Live. Thank you very much indeed for all the people who are downloading the program on iTunes. Don't forget, you can watch the show across all the different platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Stitcher, Blueberry, hopefully very shortly LinkedIn Live as well. Of course, we're on our Roku channel too, and also iTunes. Now, if you do download us on iTunes, please do leave, as always, a little bit of customer requesting now. If you could actually leave a nice review about the program, it means that the algorithm that iTunes uses to recommend the program to other users of business type programs. Do you know where I'm going with this? Then leave a nice review. It would be fantastic. 5-star review, if you don't mind. Say how great you thought Alistair Greener was. Leave a review about the programme. And then at the appropriate time, what will happen is that iTunes will then recommend the programme on to other people. Incidentally, if you want to find out more about Business Connections Live, if you'd like to appear on the programme, if you'd like to find out more, shall we say, about our media training courses, simply go to our website at businessconnectionslive.com and you can just have a quick look at the website. There we are there. So it'll show you all the programs on the front page, all the different shows. There's last week's program, the Big 100 Business Tips with Ian Dixon's. The week before that, how automation will impact your workforce. And that was a cracking show, actually, if you want to find that one going back to June. Also, you can download our How to Handle the Media training booklet as well, find out more about that. But most importantly, if you'd like to come on the program, then you can do that. Simply click on the link at the top of the page. That'll take you to the appropriate page eventually. And there we have it. Fill in the form and you can find out more about coming on the show as an industry expert, a thought leader or an expert in your industry, and just fill the form and we'll get in contact with you. You're watching Business Connections Live. Great to have your company as always. Business relationships should be personal and not a process. My guest on today's show is Alistair Greener, communications speaker and consultant with, I've known Alistair now, how long? It must be about a year and a half.
Yeah, if not two.
And I mean, an interesting career. You do a lot of business programs yourself, which is very interesting. And when people come in, do you think they're prepared to communicate, to actually explain their business well enough when you meet them for the first time?
It's quite interesting. You will know, as someone who trains people in the media, that actually what people tend to do is they work up to a conclusion when you need to really get that conclusion at the top to get that, what I call the hook, to get people wanting to watch.
Well, we're saying the same thing. I say it's the inverse storytelling, isn't it? Start with the headline, then work your way back, because you may not have the time to tell your story.
Exactly.
It's the old Goldilocks and the Three Bears. By the way, I'm going to ruin it for you now. Spoiler alert. Goldilocks, she sleeps in Baby Bear's bed and she eats Baby Bear's porridge. The rest of the story will take some time to tell, but at least you get the key points over.
Yeah.
And the other thing that comes over, I think, a lot of the time is the amount of content that is available in the public media about any organisation. And you do get people coming in that are completely unprepared when they meet you for the first time. They don't seem to realise that I too can read, as can maybe their customers. Their customers can read and find out a lot about them too. Do you see that as an issue with some of them too, that they are unprepared?
Yeah, and we all know the whole ethos of being prepared for anything that you do in life. And it's so important when you have that, you know, again, without going down this road of cliches too much, you know, about the first impression and not having that second chance. You know, it's so important to make sure that your message is coming across loud and clear and exactly how you want it to come across. And if you haven't done that preparation, if you don't know what you're going to talk about when you get there, if you don't have a clear objective in mind, you know, how many people come and they get to the end and they don't have a call to action? You know, it's extraordinary. It's like, why have you come?
Why are you here? What do you want me to do? And
exactly.
Of course, you see that on websites. Okay, let's go back to what we're talking about today. This personal as opposed to a process-driven engagement with our customers is what the show's been about. Take us through from A through to Z, the steps that you would recommend to an organisation or to one of your course members, or when they're doing your keynote, how you take them on that journey. Where do we start again and where do we finish? And what is the call to action?
The call to action, let's start off with the call to action at the end, which can also be our hook, if you like. Call to action at the end of the day is use some of these techniques Yes, they're processes, but make them personal so that your customers become not only repeat customers, but they also become your brand advocates. They become the people who love you for who you are and the way that you look after them. That comes as a result of building a personal relationship with them, not a box ticking exercise, but a proper business relationship. The way to do that, 5-step plan to make sure that you do have quality relationships. You know, it's great having 1,500 people on LinkedIn, but if you're never interacting with any of them, there's absolutely no value at all. Pick some people who are your key people that you really want to develop a relationship with. Number one, make it about them. Understand them, listen to them. Don't create a solution for a problem that doesn't exist. Make sure that you're actually genuinely helping them. You're genuinely giving something of value to them. Brings us on to number two, which is making sure that you are underselling and over-delivering in everything that you do. Make sure that you are going one step beyond, that actually your customers become surprised by the extra value that they get, rather than, yeah, they met our standards, they did what they said they were going to do. Why not surprise them and give them something extra? That's how you become memorable. The big one is what I call the head 'em off at the pass moment, the proactive communication and the quality of that communication. Make sure that you're actually talking to your clients, you're having a conversation with them. You're doing all the basics where you respond when people ask you to. The amount of people who are stunned when they say, could you fill this form in as soon as possible? I get it back to them within 24 hours. Well, I wasn't actually expecting it that quick because people don't tend to do that. Well, what a great way to be remembered by doing it. If you've got an appointment a long way out, just before, a quick confirmation, because they've probably got it on their mind, is this still going to happen? Anything that's going to make their job easier by being more proactive in your communication is going to be of huge value. Then make it personal. Interactions on email, interactions on social media, LinkedIn, make sure they're real connections. Make sure they are an opportunity for you to actually improve your relationship, to develop that relationship further. So you do get to understand them, you do get to know them. And then finally, say thank you. It's the easiest thing, isn't it? We've done a job, we finished a training, we've done one of our courses, and then everyone goes away. How quickly you're forgotten. But how nice when a gift arrives, like a friend of mine who I knew was a vegan and was telling me all about being vegan and how wonderful it is, straight on to notonthehighstreet.com and sent a vegan hamper saying, great to work with you, Mark. Thanks very much indeed. You know, what an easy way to make yourself memorable by saying thank you, a handwritten note, just something that makes it special and shows your real appreciation. Branded gifts are great, but remember, that's advertising. A true gift where you're really appreciative of that customer. And then at that point, your customer will be talking about you. They'll give you your recommendations on LinkedIn. They'll give you your testimonials for your website. And also they'll be talking about you to other people. And guard that reputation, because now you've got people who are also willing to help you build that reputation even more.
Do you know what? You've nearly done the summary there, haven't you? You've preempted the summary right at the very beginning. Just say, hi, I'm Alistair Greener, and we'll just edit the whole thing together. I mean, it's very interesting. Now, you do courses on this, don't you? And you do keynotes on this as well. So how are the keynotes received, and what kind of questions do you get from audience members?
The first question I get from audience members in a keynote or in a course is, that's all very well, but I'm not sure, I'll aim for it, but I'm not sure I can do it. And I say, you know what, that's exactly how I am. I don't do all of this all the time, you know, and I kick myself because I obviously have to walk the walk. I'm talking about it. This is something to aim for. It's something to progress. And if you have that 5-point checklist almost on the wall, ready to think, am I doing this with my customer? And just occasionally think, you know what, that's Steve Hyland. You know what? I could reach out to him. I could, do something there. You know what? I know he particularly likes walking. I found this book about walking. He might like that. Whatever it might be, just little things to reach out and just aim for it is the real goal here.
Do you think, I mean, we're nearly at the end, but do you think sometimes that people treat it with suspicion if that starts to happen? I've got a gift. It nearly feels like the old days of the radio DJ, the paella, doesn't it? You know, will you play this record? And by the way, here's a fast car.
Yes.
There's an element of that. Do you feel that, I mean, there are some organisations where that's not allowed. Mm-hmm. Some of the large corporates, they're not allowed to accept gifts or anything like that because it could be seen as not a bribe, but as a bit of a sweetener at least. I mean, do you have to be very, very careful in how you approach this?
I think the real key is don't spend loads of money, because you're quite right. As soon as you start spending loads of money, now you're making a massive influence. The influence should be in the gift itself and the act of giving and the act of saying thank you. That's, if you like, a way of communicating with them. As soon as it becomes something of monetary value, of high value, now you're into a different ballgame. And in fact, a lot of research has been done into showing that actually spending more than 5%, spending fortunes on guarding relationships is also not worth it. The key is if you have trust with someone, if someone knows you and you said, you know what, Steve, I know you would think, here's a book about that. That's going to be seen for genuinely what it is. And if it's not, then you probably have to question that relationship in the first place.
Do you know, it's very interesting. Maybe the word that we've been missing out until the very end there is genuine. Do you want to build genuine relationships and do not go through a process? Listen, it's been fascinating talking to you as always. Thank you very much for coming in. I'm really going to put you under pressure right now because now you've got to do a very short summary of what we've just talked about because you've just done it, but you're going to do it again. Straight down camera number 4, say who you are, where you're from, please. It's as long or as short as you want it to be, but it's been a fascinating insight. So Alistair, the airwaves are all yours. Straight down camera 4.
Thank you very much. I'm Alistair Greener. I run a training company called Present Yourself. I also talk about making business relationships personal. In other words, take out the box ticking exercise and make those relationships mean something. I have a 5-step way of making sure that our relationships are more personal, more genuine, and are going to prove to be more valuable to us, not just personally, but also in business. Number 1, make sure that whenever you are having a business relationship, it is about the person you're having a relationship with. Don't create solutions for problems that don't exist. Listen to your customers, understand who they are, get underneath the veneer, get underneath that surface and really get to know them. And they will become your brand advocates because you have that relationship with them. Secondly, I always think it's important to go one step beyond. Don't just say it. Don't just say about putting the customer at the center of everything you do. Actually think about ways that you can do that. Try not to oversell and underdeliver. Make it the other way round. Have some nice surprises for your customers and your clients that they suddenly think, I wasn't expecting that follow-up call. I wasn't expecting those extra course notes that you've given me. Whatever it is for you, though you can give extra value to your customers, that's a way to make yourself memorable and, more importantly, trusted. The next thing is communication. We are very, very busy today. We've got emails flying backwards and forwards. What we don't want to be doing is chasing up our clients. Well, guess what? Your clients don't want to be chasing you up. So always be proactive in your communications. Get ahead of the game. Look at the way they communicate with you. Are you reflecting that in the way that you communicate with them? Make sure that whatever communication you have is to the point, it deals with what you need it to be, and is doing something to extend that relationship. It's not a stock standard generic email. Remember I said, ban that word generic. We don't want it. We want to make sure that it's real and it's authentic. Then, talking about being real authentic, it's about getting personal. Be as personal as you can on it. But maybe I should review that, but be personal when you go onto social media, you go onto LinkedIn. Make sure you actually have a genuine interaction, that people realize that you have actually engaged with them properly. You're not just there whipping down through the list of everybody that you might think you want to say hello to that day. It's not about quantity, it's about quality of that communication. Then, of course, the final one is say thank you. Thank you for being my client. Thank you for helping me, and thank you for all the business that you're giving me. Simple little things. Once you've built up trust, once you've built up that relationship and your client knows you're thinking about them, just a handwritten note. Maybe it's a tray of cupcakes. Maybe it's a gift that means something personal to them. And we're not talking about spending a lot of money. It's the thoughtful thought that counts, as John Rulin would say. And if you do all of these things, and Yes, will you do all of them? No, I don't do all of them, but I aim to try my best to do as many of them as I can. And that way I'm going to have business relationships that matter. They're going to be relationships that are going to recommend me. They're relationships that are going to become my brand advocates. And if I can do that, I don't have to spend so much money on marketing. I don't have to spend that much money on publicity, because all of my clients who I've been looking after will be helping me get more business. I hope it gets you more business, and just make sure you don't pay lip service to communication. You personalize the personalization process and make your business relationships personal, not a process.
Fantastic stuff. My thanks to Alistair Greenett. Don't make it generic. The other word that we should get rid of as well that I hate is passionate. That's the other one that's used all over the place. Alistair, thank you very much indeed. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the programme. Really insightful, so thank you very much
Thank you very much.
And I hope you enjoyed today's programme too. A fantastic show, and maybe it'll make you think about your organisation, about your business. Coming up in the future, here's some of the future guests we've got lined up for you. David Richards will be joining us when it comes to identifying your brand and what your brand proposition is. Martine Robbins, the HR department, she's going to be in here. Should you have an outsourced HR team? Do you need an HR team within your organisation? Penny Haslam, the award-winning inspirational speaker, is going to be back on the programme. Warren Knight, when it comes to digital marketing, he is the man to be listening to. He'll be back on the show in the near future. Susan Armstrong, speaker and author, and also Deborah Hume, director of Minerva. That wraps up today's programme. Hope you've enjoyed today's show. Don't forget, we're back again next week. And we're going to be live with another great show all lined up for you. But until then, from myself, Steve Highland, and also Alistair Greenett, thank you very much indeed for watching. Till we do it all again, have a great week. Bye for now. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel.